Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me this week I have Dan. How are you, Dan? Hello, Dan.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
good, mate. I've got a few good results. Makes
oh
it
dear.
easy. Wow.
It does. I think the connection's just cut up on us there. We were sounding all good just before we came to air, but it just cut out a little bit there. Hopefully it sort of settles down as we go. Looks like we've had a few technical issues to start with, but that's all right. We'll push on through. As you said, I think I sort of made out that it's always a bit easier to record an episode after two pretty fantastic wins against MK Dons and against Ipswich Town yesterday morning, which were great to see. Going up against Ipswich, we've sort of been saying all season that until we test ourselves against those big clubs, and we sort of came up short against Peterborough. It was great to get the result against Ipswich Town to sort of put our confidence back on track that we can actually match up against those bigger clubs and really do deserve to be up the top of the table. Oh dear, have we got any mic? We don't have mic working. What I might do, this worked the first week that we had this issue with Brad. I'm going to drop Dan out of the stream and see if he comes back in. It'll fix itself. So I'll do that. And for the moment, we'll just have me. But we'll sort of as we go on and when we get Dan back, maybe if I add him back now, he's there. How's that, Dan? Is that better? No, still having troubles. Maybe Dan, if you I'll drop you out, but if you leave the studio and come back in, maybe see if it sort of restarts it that way. See if that helps it. I'll try dropping you out again. Yeah, this could be an interesting episode. We had this issue with Brad in the first week and thought we'd sort of resolved them, but I think Mitch last night was meant to be on the episode and couldn't actually connect, and now looks like I think Dan's just having a few internet connection issues, but that's okay. Could be an interesting episode, but we'll see how we go. We did start with that game against MK Dons on the weekend, which was a 3-1 win, which was pretty fantastic. We haven't lost to them yet in our history, and so it was sort of a game that, on paper at least, seemed to be a pretty gimme game for us. But as we've seen with teams, Swindon, Fleetwood, just because we're going into the game as a favourite doesn't necessarily mean that's how it's going to turn out. Could have been a bit of a banana skin game for us, but it was good to get the 3 points. And I guess, the main talking point for me, and I'll see what Dan says when he manages to come back into the stream, but the main talking point for me was certainly Magennis with the 2 goals, and the fact that, scoring so early in the game, and then conceding just as early in the game, to then go 2-1 up after 12, 13 minutes just showed that, we're not a side that's going to lie down much this season. We've shown perhaps against Swindon that we can be rattled and we can struggle, but against MK Dons, we sort of showed a bit of backbone and sort of hit back straight away, which was great to see, and brilliantly taken goal as well for the second goal. Well worked. Keogh clearly passed his use by date. I think Grant McCann actually said that we sort of noted that going into this game, and we actually targeted him as the centre back that was weaker, and sort of gave us that opportunity to go in on them in that manner. It was great to see him working really well under the ball and fire into the roof of the net. It's probably a little bit disappointing that we didn't go on with it, in the sense that the half then sort of just panned out as much more subdued. And I think MK Dons had a couple of decent chances themselves, but it was good to then see Scott get the 3rd goal as well, because now that he's starting to get a few goals in the league as well, shows that he's starting to come into a bit of form. We sort of talked about it the other week when he was our focus for the week, that that Scott has a lot of promise. We signed him in January, essentially as our Bowen replacement. So there's a little bit of pressure or expectation on him from that point of view because of the player he's linked to in that sense. But good to sort of see him start to perform on the league stage for us. Of course, after the game, MK Dons manager again sort of using the same. We see it on Twitter now. The away manager bingo card for their responses on the games, and Dan's just come back in. So let's cross our fingers, see how this is going to go. Dan, how are you? Do we have you now?
Oh, I think so.
Brilliant. Yes, that sounds much better. Sounding good.
Yeah, I don't know. I must have just been my laptop or something. So I'm just on my computer now, but obviously I've got no video. So
No, that's all good. I was sort of just giving a solo recap of the MK Dons game, but I thought I can get your thoughts as well. I sort of pinpointed the highlight for me as being Magennis with the 2 goals, and especially the second goal coming so quickly after we conceded was great to see. Yeah,
look, I just watched the highlights of that again just before I came on. I don't know how he didn't get a hat trick, to be honest. I thought in that chance he had just before he went off was sensational, and he probably should have done better there. But he did really well to get the first 2 goals. I was pretty impressed with that game as a whole. I got concerned when they scored against us pretty quick. That concerned me that we were sort of going to just throw away the bit of momentum that we started building, and that perhaps those defensive frailties that we knew from last year were going to rear their ugly head. But I think from that point on, then it seemed to the whole team seemed to pull itself together and get on with the job again. And I think just generally over the last few games, not only has Magennis been impressive for me, but Jacob Greaves has just he's I think at the beginning of the season we were talking about Keane Lewis Potter being the one to watch and the one who was really going to be the standout who's going to make his mark this season. But at the moment, I think Greaves is actually giving him a run for his money in that regard. He is, considering the players that are theoretically or the players that he's challenging for that to hold that starting position, he's doing very well. He's just about the number 1 centre back we've got at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's kind of remarkable that he's completely usurped Device's spot in the team, and it's now not so much Greaves kind of getting a pinch hit in the team at centre back. It's that it's his spot to lose, essentially. That the Device isn't even making the bench most weeks now because Greaves is just so assured in that position. And you're quite right. I remember it was back at the start of the season, and we were talking about, I think it was Greaves and Sheaf as the 2 who'd sort of had their League 2 spells on loan, and potentially getting chances in the side this season. And Sheaf obviously hasn't necessarily had as many chances in the cup games as Greaves has. But Greaves has just taken his chance with both hands and has looked tremendous in the role.
Yeah, I don't know really what else to say. I think the only thing he's missing from him is to pinch a couple more goals for us or something at the other end.
He's looking dangerous. He's having a lot of opportunities from set pieces. But yeah, the goal will come, and it's just going to be great for him because it was great to see him sign a new deal. I think last week, the three-year extension +1, which we seem to do a lot of these days, which it's a nice long-term deal for him. And he's a player that, if we were to make that step up to the championship, he's a player who could take that step up with us and really, cement his spot in the side and his place in the City team.
Yeah, I think he's got all the skills and all the attributes. He seems to hold himself really well on the field and keep calm and composed. He throws his body in there. He took a big, stopped a shot, I think, with his face against Ipswich, maybe. Was it Ipswich?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's it.
Or was it? No, might have been his back or something, like hit his kidney or something.
Oh, okay, I can't remember.
But he was down for a while.
Yeah, it was a big hit anyway. But I think what's really pleasing is, while some of these players are taking their chances and really stepping up and being standouts in their own right, they're still not like. No one's really been that. We're not relying on one or two people to be huge standouts, and I think like across the board, everyone is consistently, a 7 or 8 out of 10, and we're not having a team full of sixes and relying on Jared Bowen and Grosicki to be nines, whatever. We're really consistent across the whole team, and even on, like I mentioned Kim Spotty before. The way he started the season, we thought, well, he's going to be a hugely important player, but sadly, we haven't, like, in one sense, sadly, but we haven't really missed him. The players that have come in have been doing a wonderful job.
Which I think is a reassuring thing. I think, and we see a lot of comments, regarding the fact that we're now top of the league after this game against Ipswich, which we'll talk about in a second. But the fact that we're top of the league and people sort of saying, well, we were top of the league in the Premier League after a similar number of games. We were, challenging for the top 6 halfway through last season, and look what happened. And everyone, perhaps rightly so, putting a bit of caution to the optimism at the moment. But I think the fact that, as you say, we're not necessarily missing Lewis Potter shows that we have enough depth in this squad that if the worst was to happen and say, knock on wood, it's not going to happen, but say Greaves and Lewis Potter get sold to championship clubs in January, it's not as if the squad would fall apart like it did last season. We've got the players and the personnel to fill in those holes in the side.
Yeah, I think we do have that depth within the squad this season that we haven't had in previous years. And I think what's also really good is that our subs are getting amongst the goals now as well. They're really having an impact when they come on. James Scott has come on and scored a couple of goals. Eves is coming on and nabbing a late goal here and there. So the goals getting shared around between the guys that are starting and the guys on the bench, and across that front three. Because what we say, we were talking about in our chat that what Wilkes is on 6 and Magennis is on 5 and King Lewis Potter's on 5 or something now.
Yeah.
So that's a good return for all of those. And then you go, well, Eves is on 2 off the bench, and he's only
Scott's on a couple as
appearances
well.
or something.
Delican's got a couple. Yeah.
They're really good signs. I think the other important thing was they mentioned in one of the games, I can't remember whether it was Ipswich or the MK Dons game, but that Magennis last year scored 4 goals.
Yeah,
last season was 4,
yeah.
and he's passed that already. So, and he's scoring goals for Northern Ireland. So he's in a rich vein of form. Long may it continue.
I saw the comment on Twitter as well, just around the fact that now it's the 5 subs in games, that it's almost tantamount to cheating for us, because our squad depth just means that, like you're saying, we bring on 5 players around about the 60-minute mark, and it's almost like a fresh team. And we're getting all these late goals now from the subs who are just coming on with the fresh legs and running at teams, because the depth that we have is virtually or is unparalleled in this league. And being able to make the 5 subs is just completely, it's increasing our advantage in a way.
Yeah, well, we don't want to talk too much about Ipswich just yet, but I think on the 5 subs, we saw that yesterday morning for us with, Louis Coyle came on with 15 minutes to go and played in midfield just because they could give someone a rest and get some run into his legs. If you've only got 3 subs, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a move that you're going to make when you're limited to 3.
And it's great for him as well, because he's had to bide his time with Emmanuel playing so well, that it's great that we can now say to him, you will get game time. We can throw you on. It's like you're saying, it's not just the 3 subs where you would never sort of make that sort of change.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. I guess, with all of this, the COVID stuff that's still impacting them in the UK, not so much over here at the moment, but it's still pretty heavily impacting them there. They've made their decision, and I guess we just reap the benefits of that decision. I guess. I don't feel bad. We're not doing anything that's against the rules. We as a club had to get ourselves into a position where this is something that we can take advantage of. We could have, not bought those players in the off season. We could have not recruited so that we had those players waiting, in line to jump on the park. So
In a lot of ways, it's like when when Newcastle got relegated or West Ham got relegated, where they're a club that's too big for the division in a few ways, and I guess the drop from the Premier League to the Championship in some ways isn't as steep as the drop from the Championship to League One, and it's not as if we've still got Hernandez and Diame running around, so it's not as if we have a Premier League caliber squad, but the squad that we have, or even that we had in the Championship, and we've talked about it a few times, that when we were in the Championship, we were effectively picking off the best League One players, and we've dropped to League One and we've carried on picking off the best League One players. So we've just got a squad of the best League One players, and it's showing out on the park.
Yeah, look, it's been a tremendous start to the season, and so obviously, I mean, I can't pick any of the players that have come in that have not done their job. So I think in that regard, it's nice for a change just to talk about all of the success stories from a transfer window, because normally we usually have one or two sort of flops amongst and a few sort of gems, but this has seemed to be pretty consistent across the park, and the homework's been done well. So we're seeing the rewards. We've got ourselves in a really good position at this stage of the season. 2 points clear at the top with a game in hand. So whenever we get that catch-up game, potentially 5 points clear at the top. What are we, about a quarter of the way through the season?
Well, almost a third, really. I was looking at it the other day, and I guess after this Ipswich game, it's now how many games played is it? Is it 14 or 13 games played? I think maybe 13 games played. So, so we've played the 13 games. 46 game season. So what's that? Another 2 games, and we'll be pretty much a third of the way through. So well on track for, dare I say it, well on track for 100 points. Long way to go, but we've made the start we've made. We've just got to keep going. And I guess before we move on to that Ipswich game, for a change, I'll get your 3-2-1 for the MVP first, because I feel like if I give my 3-2-1, you'll just hitch on the bandwagon. So I'll get your thoughts first.
3-2-1 for MK Dons. I can't really go past Magennis for 3 for getting a lovely brace. I think I want to go Greaves and Ingram for my 2 and my 1.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll echo you with Magennis for the 3 and Greaves for the 2, but I'll go Hunter for the 1. I think, I think it's funny because the title of this episode is an 11 out of 11 performance, and it's both the MK Dons and the Ipswich games. It felt like everyone on the park played well, but Honeyman's always an easy one to give a vote to, because I think he's leading the team out there, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when we go up, and how he performs this time around in the Championship, because he's almost a completely different player to what we had last season with him in the Championship, where I don't think we saw the best of him necessarily. So that will be interesting. But yeah, look, we'll talk about that Ipswich game now, which we're still buzzing from. It sort of reminds me of that promotion season under Steve Bruce, where we went to, we'd go to a side like a Burnley or a Middlesbrough or Brentford even, and we'd turn them over 2 or 3-0. And it's that sort of belief that it gives you, where you're actually going to one of the challenges for promotion and turning them over pretty convincingly. And it's sort of, there's no better test that you can have as a side, to go to a side that's conceded 1 goal for the season from the penalty spot, had the best home form in the division, or even England, I think, I'm not sure, and you do them 3-0. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting one leading into this, because we were the best away form and they were the best home form, I think. So, I mean, we've come up trumps, which was great. But again, like, this was another just, I think, commanding performance, really. I can't really put it any other way. And I don't understand, again, how Paul Lambert's come out and said, indicated otherwise.
You came into the stream just as I was saying the same thing about Martin at MK Dons, and I think the funniest was Martin saying, after we scored the goal, we dominated until they scored again, and everyone sort of pointed out the fact that they didn't even touch the ball before we scored again. So the rubbish these managers are coming out with at the moment. Lambert's comments as well.
Yeah, he said something, and then there's just...
It was the BBC. or
That one,
something, sort of saying,
yes.
"Oh, their
Who
front
said we?
three is very good."
Yeah, said and they basically said that we don't look like a top of the table or top of the league team. And
Yeah.
I mean, we're top of the league. We rolled them 3-0. They had a few chances, but nothing. There wasn't anything
Yeah.
amazing. I don't know what else we've got to do to convince these guys.
Yeah, I don't think, and I was quite surprised. I actually thought if any team was going to pay us credit, it'd be a team like Ipswich, where they're not they're not fighting relegation, they're not in trouble or anything, so the manager isn't under that sort of pressure. I didn't think he'd feel the need to defend his team's performance by rubbishing us. I thought he'd be able to come out and say, you know, Hull were the better team. We rolled up our sleeves. We tried our best. It was an off day. We've learned a lot of lessons. This will put us in good, something like that. But it's just crazy that it's just time and time again these managers just can't suck it up and just give us some credit. But look, if this is us not playing well, if this is us underperforming, this league will get whacked when we start to perform at a higher level, I think. But look, Wilkes scoring after 2 minutes was fantastic. You sort of mentioned it before, but Eves scoring a goal was great. Really good finish as well. So really good for his confidence, I hope. And Magennis again, right before half time with a really well taken goal as well.
Yeah, look, they were, and we're not even counting all the chances that went begging as well. There was Wilkes threw it into the box on his own in the second half. Is the main one I can think of, but I'm sure there were some others.
I think Magennis had a pretty good chance as well. I'm trying to think. It might have been before he actually scored, and somebody else had a chance as well. Yeah, but yeah, look, it could have been 5 or 6 goals really, and we sort of say the same most weeks. Is we're making a lot of chances. We just aren't finishing as well as we could.
Yeah. So look, I don't even. We played well. We won the game. I just can't. It still bugs me that everyone wants to complain about us and say that we're not like as good as we are. Like you said, like why can't they just pay credit where it's due?
Yeah,
but
and
anyway,
it's just take your medicine. It's not you're not admitting that you're the worst side in the division. You're not signing off on being relegated. It's just paying your opposition a bit of respect. And it seems there was a comment in the group where from Scott Daniels who sort of asked, I missed the game. Was it as convincing a performance as the scoreline suggested? And I sort of said, well, yes, it was based on the scoreline. We won 3-0. We had the majority of the good chances. I don't think Ipswich had many good chances at all. But they won the possession count, but it's not. Games aren't won and lost on possession. And, it's a classic sort of FIFA thing of looking at, oh, well, we had more possession, or, oh, we had more shots, which they didn't even have more shots than us. And it's like, it doesn't really matter. We had more goals, and that's what matters. So it seems strange that managers can't really grasp that. And look, it was similar last season. We beat Fulham at their patch with 3 counter goals, I think, which was sort of the most in a game for the season or something, and had like 20% possession or 30% possession or something. And it doesn't matter. We won 3-0. Like, you just got to accept it. Most clean sheets in England, which is a great stat to have. Best away form in England as well. As you said before, 2 points clear at the top with a game in hand. And I guess most importantly as well, 8 points clear of 7th. And that's sort of the gap that I'm keeping an eye on, because as optimistic as I am, you kind of just want to be putting those points in the bank and keeping that gap growing, so that if the worst happens and you start to stumble, you're at least assured of that spot in the playoffs.
Yeah. And I think I was just thinking of, I think last time I was on, which was maybe a couple of weeks ago, we'd had a couple of disappointing results, maybe those couple of losses against those teams, and we were talking about, it was at the end of our run of form. Was everyone starting to catch on to our tricks or whatever? And I sort of indicated that, if you're getting those little patches where you get 3 or 4 wins together, and then maybe if you drop points, but you go on another bit of a run, and you get, and we seem to have hit that second that patch again. So we're now, I think it's 5 games in all competitions, but in a row or something. So we're in another one of those little purple patches. And if you get a couple more wins before before we drop some more points. We're in a really strong position, and as you say, that gap grows, and when we drop those points, it's not a life or death. Yeah. So
definitely. Well, I'll go first this time, and I'll give my 3 votes to Emmanuel for this one. I think I saw some stat that he's leading us for the most passes, the most crosses, the most chances created, all sorts of stats like that, both defensive and offensive, which is just fantastic. And, we keep I'm a broken record on it, but I just can't get over the fact that I still remember the day we signed him and Coyle, and it was sort of, it's fantastic. We've signed Coyle, homegrown lad, fantastic. He's going to fix our right back problems. It's going to be great. And then we signed Emmanuel a couple of hours later, and it was like, well, it's good. We've got some depth at right back now. It's good. We've got some depth there. But there wasn't much of a thought of Emmanuel and what he'd bring to the side. And it's, it's completely flipped now. And he's sort of leading the way in that position. And then I'll give my 2 votes to Wilkes, who I thought was really dangerous. We were sort of saying he created a few chances and took that first goal really well as well. And then the easy out for me, as always, is I'll give the 1 to Honeyman.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I might actually. I don't know. This is a tough one because you talked about Emmanuel, and now I want to give points to Emmanuel. But you're talking about him, and then I was just going to say, like, his crossing is. I've never seen someone who can deliver those crosses so consistently and so effortlessly. You see players trying to whip in crosses, and they look like they're bloody trying to smash at the length of the field or whatever. But he always just.
It's always taps it.
It looks like it's just a little it looks like he's just dinking it in there or whatever. But it's always just getting in that right area. So he's just, I don't know, he's got that sort of, and his work rate is, I'd say he's got to be up there with Honeyman in terms of fitness and stuff. Like the amount of work that he's doing, he's getting up and down that flank like nothing I've ever seen really. But I'm not going to give him 3 points. I'm going to give Wilkes 3 points. A good early goal, a couple of really good chances that he created and was dangerous, I think, throughout. I'll give 2 points to Emmanuel. And I'll give a point to Eves for coming on and getting a goal and doing well. He deserves, he's working hard, and I think what's good is he's scoring goals as well. And so if something happens to Magennis, touch wood that nothing does, but if something does, you got a player who's coming off the bench and scoring and is in a little bit of form himself, which makes things easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll give a shout out to another member of the group, Mike Hudson, who was saying, great team performance, particularly from the central defenders, Emmanuel, and his man of the match, which was Honeyman. So, I come back to the title of this episode, it's 11 out of 11, because I think there's no passengers at the moment. Everyone is playing so well. And I think it's the benefit of first of all, the depth, and second of all, being able to make those 5 subs and just giving everyone that game time. So people coming off the bench, for instance, like Eves, know that this is their chance to prove themselves. It gives Coyle that chance in the side as well. And so they're going to make the most of their opportunities to try and either start the next game or get another appearance in the next game. So look, it's fantastic all round from the side. And yes, we're in League One. We're not in the Championship or the Premier League, but winning football is enjoyable football. It's enjoyable staying up and watching City play, or getting up early and watching City play when we're winning all the time. It's great to watch, and it's almost I kind of keep thinking back to that 15-16 season. It's almost it's on par or it's comparable to that season as probably my favorite season supporting City, where it's the chemistry of the side, it's the quality of the players, it's the goals, it's the everything. It's great to watch.
Yeah, look, it's not a bad time to be a City supporter. Regardless of their position down in league, or being in League One and not in a higher division, I think they're playing great football. We're getting lots of results. I guess, to echo the UK press, it's a bit of a shame that there's no fans in stadiums, because I think that's probably the only thing that's missing is that bit of extra, that bit of noise, while we're watching from Australia. That little bit of the crowd noise is always good. Hear them hiss at the referee when he makes a mistake or whatever. But
and I think, and I could be wrong on this, but my sense is, I think if crowds were allowed in stadiums, I think the KCOM would be as full as it's been in recent seasons, supporting this team. I think, and you see a lot of people on Twitter sort of saying that it's going to be a shame if there's no crowds at all this season, because to be able to get into the stadium and watch this team is sort of really high on a lot of people's agendas. And I think not only will there be that sort of rush to go and watch games once it's allowed again just for the sake of it, it's also going to be to try and get a chance to watch this side and cheer them on to hopefully lifting the trophy at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think, like, I was just thinking, like, perhaps, like, not that you want to ever say that a global pandemic is like as a positive or whatever. I guess a positive you could try to take out of it is that cities essentially, or we've had, and so has everyone, had a free hit for the fans so far. You know, no one's been able to go into the stadiums, so no one's been not wanting to buy tickets and being disappointed or anything like that. Everyone's got the same opportunity to watch. And now that we're performing well, once they do open up, as you say, I think there will be a flood, and we'll have, you know, as many as we're allowed in, whether that's only a half capacity or a quarter capacity or whatever, we'll have whatever we're allowed in. All of those allocations will be sold. I think all of the tickets will sell very quickly, and I think that's partly due to, you know, we've been able to rebuild some of that faith without any pressure, because there's been no crowds there to influence or you know.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's interesting to think in a game like that MK Dons game where we concede so early. Yes, it was an away game, so maybe not as much of an issue, but you can imagine if there was a crowd there, A, the MK Dons supporters would be sort of G'd up because they've equalised and cheering their side on, and B, City supporters would probably be sort of murmurings, getting on the side's back a little bit at conceding so early, that sort of thing. Maybe we don't go down the other end and score again straight away. So I think you're right. It's interesting that with no crowds there, I think that element of pressure is gone. In a way, it's sort of like, well, if there's no crowds all the way through, maybe there's less pressure on this side. You don't get that sort of tightness on the run in to winning the title or to going up that you would have if there was supporters there. Of course, you want the supporters there cheering them on, but it's going to be a really interesting thing psychologically of what changes when you start to get crowds back and how clubs sort of respond to that. Because I think they're already talking about, and we're sort of moving on to the off-field discussion now, but they're already sort of talking about, I think, small numbers of supporters being allowed back into low-risk areas in stadiums. And I think it's going to be home supporters only. So for us in Hull being in a high-risk area, obviously we're not going to have crowds for a little bit longer. I guess it makes those away trips a little bit more interesting even if you've only got 5,000-10,000 away supporters, away team supporters there, could make it a little bit interesting.
Yeah, that's I mean, I guess like once fans are getting let back in, then that's obviously a positive sign. So as frustrating as it would be to go and only be surrounded by your opponent's fans, I'd still be looking forward to it. I think it'll add that little bit of extra dynamic to the game and make things a little bit more interesting.
Maybe City supporters who live in those areas could kind of sneak in. Maybe I don't know.
Don't know. Wear two jerseys, take it off when you get inside. But you know, I think like that's part of the theatre of the sport that we love so much is as much as you hate it, but having a referee get bullied by the fans into blowing his whistle or to giving a penalty or to like whatever, some of those things, as frustrating as they can be when they go against you, it's also why, you know, we love the game and we love seeing everyone so passionate and involved in it. So and I'm looking forward to seeing the fans back in for sure.
Yeah, and I think we saw it with Aussie rules here and other sports here when crowds started going back in. And you're right, it was sort of highlighted on because obviously they got the fake crowd noise for the goals, so you still had the cheers and stuff, but it was always highlighted by if an opposition player did something or if the umpire or the ref made a decision and you got the boos or whatever, and commentators are sort of saying that, we have missed this a bit. You got that emotion, you got that atmosphere back in the grounds, which is always a good thing. But I guess the other off-field topic that I wanted to touch on, and I know sort of looking a little bit ahead because it's only just the end of November now, but my thoughts have sort of been drifting a little bit towards the January transfer window, and I sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier. But I mean, the squad as deep as it is, do you see any need to strengthen? I mean, we've been reasonably fortunate with injuries so far. We haven't really been challenged. I think in most positions we're pretty well set. I think Elder is probably the only one I can think of who, if he was to go down, we really only have Fleming behind him, not a senior body. But I think Fleming's shown enough that he could step up for the odd patch of games. Do you think that the priority in January just needs to be holding on to the players that we've got?
I can't really think of a particular area of the pitch that desperately needs strengthening. So I think that should be the priority, trying to keep a hold of the squad that we've got, particularly particularly guys like Wilkes and Magennis and Keane Lewis Potter and the like, who are scoring plenty of our goals for us. And someone like Emmanuel, because I feel like there'll definitely be some interest that will come in for him for his outstanding start to the season. So I think just holding on to players and trying to get through January unscathed in that regard will be the aim. I guess the only would be, as you sort of mentioned, injury. If there was a major injury or something that essentially ruled a player out for the season or something, then maybe you'd be looking to go in and grab a loan player or something for the second half, maybe. But I wouldn't be thinking that we'd be wanting to spend much money, because I know we're all on cost-cutting measures and the like. But that's my view of it anyway.
And dare I say it, but would you sort of look at maybe moving a couple of players on? I mean, my mind goes straight to Device and whether we'd sort of look to cash in on him if he's sort of lost his place in the side. And I think I heard McCann sort of saying that not only is Greaves ahead of him now, but also Alfie Jones. And I remembered his name this week. Jones has gone ahead of him in the pecking order as well. So, you'd sort of be looking at it from both sides. As Device, you'd probably be saying, well, I had the interest from the MLS in the off-season and that didn't materialise. And from our point of view, you'd be saying, well, we've now got two players in great form ahead of him. Jones, yes, he's only on a one-year deal, but as our hunch, I think, was before he joined or when he joined, if we go up, I think he'll probably sign on to a longer deal. It's probably just a wait and see at this stage for him. Would you look to try and cash in on Device and see what we can get for him?
I guess that's an interesting one. If he's not playing and he continues to not play and not be able to force his way back into the squad, then he's had interest in consecutive windows now. I think there was interest. Was it MLS in January and then again in the September or window again? I think.
Yeah, I can't even remember who was interested in him. But yeah, I think it was one of the MLS.
Yeah. So look, if it came back again, I could see that, them trying to do a deal there. But I guess, I don't know. I'd still like to keep the squad as it is, but he would probably be one of those highest wage earners that we've got at the moment. So yeah, maybe that is.
And that's a good point as well. I wonder if the Allams would sort of look at it even just from that point of view and say, well, he's earning a big wage. He's not even making the first 11 at the moment. Why do we need him? Which is harsh, but especially I think in League One, I guess that's probably the mindset.
Yeah, we've criticised them for it before or made plenty of comment on it, but we've also been ready to admit, at the end of the day, they're a football club and they're a business, so they've got to do what's best for them. And I know they're trying to offload the club, and that means, trying to reduce their debts and all that sort of stuff. So that's all part and parcel of that whole process. So
yeah, and I'll use that as a really good segue to say that Logan and I did talk about the Allams takeover of the club in our second episode of our flashback series that we're doing, which looks back at the last decade, where we talked about the second half of the 2010-11 season where the Allams took over. And that's available to all our Patreons at the moment. So if you're not a Patreon, please sign up today. The link's in the description for this video. It's as little as £3 a month, and it helps us put these podcasts together would be fantastic. But it will be available to everyone else next Monday as well, Australia time. So it's at Monday morning your time or Sunday night UK time. I'm not sure when it will go up at this stage. But we'll move on. It's already turning into a pretty long episode, but we'll move on and talk about Reece Burke, who's our player of the week. Having just talked about Device a little bit, his one-time centre-back partner in Reece Burke is the player focus. And I mean, I sometimes forget that we signed him for about £1.5 million, at least according to reports. And back in July 2018 under Adkins, I think it was his first summer window with us. And he's made 83 appearances for us now in the league and scored a goal in the cup just recently, and has kept 23 clean sheets in his time as well. And he's been one, I think, who while when we got relegated at the end of last season, I think he and Device probably equally shared the blame for the poor lapses in defending. But I think certainly now that Greaves has come into the side and has looked so assured, Burke has certainly looked a lot stronger as well. So whether that sort of then says more about Device and his form or what, I'm not so sure. But I think Burke has certainly been a strong performer for us and certainly been a really valuable signing.
Yeah, look, he's been up and down, but I think he's been, for the most part, he's proved to be a good acquisition, and I've enjoyed watching him. I think, for me, I think the thing that I like most about Burke is when he steps out of the defence and takes the ball forward and overloads in that midfield zone and pushes towards the box to create overloads and create a bit of pressure. And I think when he's confident in himself and when he's been playing well, he tends to do that, and he picks his moments really well to do that, which he's helped create a few opportunities while doing that. So I don't know. I think that's one of the things I really like about him. But I think generally, he's a solid player, and I think he's still young, so he's still improving. And if we keep a hold of him and he keeps improving, keep playing the way he does in a couple of years' time, I think he deserves another crack at the championship anyway. And so hopefully we get through this year, we keep a hold of him in next year, see how he goes, because I'm not sure. They did just sort of fall apart at the back end of last season, and whatever confidence they had established in the first half of the season was steadily eroded throughout that second period. So
yeah, and I think centre backs especially, it's so much about the confidence. Similar with goalkeepers, where I think as the performances sort of worsened and more shots were faced and more opposition runs and everything like that, it does become quite difficult to keep your form going and keep playing well. So I don't think it's necessarily a comment on him as a player, more so his form, I think, that fell apart.
Yeah, look, I can certainly tell you, as a centre-back who played in a team that conceded quite a few goals this year, it can get very difficult to stay motivated at times. And even at an amateur level, it can be a very hard slog to be picking that ball up out of the back of your net and be ready to go again week after week after week. So, look, I think the off season has done him wonders. So hopefully it'll do the same for me next year. But yeah, look, I don't know. I think probably out of because him and Device came at the same or similar time.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah.
And I honestly, there's been periods where Device has been, supremely commanding, but I think Burke has just essentially been more consistent and has probably been a better acquisition for us overall.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think it would be interesting because I think if we aren't to get promoted, I do get the sense that players like him, Device, certainly would be leaving the club. As you sort of alluded to with Device, I think Burke's probably one of our higher wage earners now as well. So I do hope we go up and we can keep hold of him and see what he can do in the championship next season, because there's a player there. And look, if we can sort of push up into the championship and establish ourselves again, we've got a really exciting core of a squad. And I think Burke is certainly part of that. So that will be exciting to see and good to see him sort of making a place in the team his own again next to Greaves. And, it kind of, I guess, shows McGann's confidence in him so far this season.
Yeah, it certainly does, and I mean, how could you can't, I don't know, you can't really argue with that. He's come in and we've got the most clean sheets. We've got the best defense. Do we have the best defense? Or close? We'd be close to. We'd be up there. But performing very well. It'd be hard to. You'd be hard pressed to take either of those out of the squad. And then again, particularly over this last little bunch of games where Greaves and Burke have started to form up that partnership. And I think that's the other thing that's really important in centre backs. I will breathe somewhere in this. is that partnership and being able to form that bond and that understanding with the guys that's next to you, so that if Burke picks up the ball and wants to run forward, that Greaves knows what's going on and knows where to hold, and that one of the midfielders might drop in or whatever. And that's all just understood, and they know it without having to really talk about it so much, which that seems to be starting to become evident, that partnership that he's developing with Greaves, and I guess the back line as a whole. That's a whole. Again, another thing that we lacked for big periods of especially that second half of last season, was that consistency across the back line and having a clear cut first 11 back four.
I guess Long was in goal for much of last season, but Ingram clearly has a lot of confidence in his back four, as they do in him, and that's working really well. But speaking of Long, I'm working on my segues this week. Clearly, I'm doing my little segue. But speaking of Long, we'll probably see him in action against Stevenage in the FA Cup this weekend. I think we've been moved to the early games, so I think we're on at 11:30 our time, which is fantastic to get a nice early game for a change. It's not been the case for a little while now. I can't remember the last early game that we had. Now, I don't think we've ever actually played Stevenage before, so this is one of those games. It's a real shame that there's no supporters allowed in the grounds, because it would have been a nice ground tick for the City supporters. So it'd be an interesting one in that sense. And they're sitting down in League Two, so probably, no disrespect to them, probably gives us a reasonable chance or a reasonable hope of making our way into the third round, where we look to face one of the big clubs perhaps and test ourselves against the bigger clubs in that cup. But how do you see this one?
Yeah, look, I think our form warrants that we go into this as favourites, and I'd be expecting to come away victors and walking into the next round of the cup.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just pulling up their form now. It looks like they've had a bit of mixed form in their last 5 games. Looks like they've got, I say mixed form. They've got 1 win in their last 5 with a handful of draws thrown in there as well. But most recently beat Port Vale before that loss to Bolton. So, and I think that looks like they just got past non-league opposition on penalties in the first round of the FA Cup. So, probably not the toughest of opposition, and certainly one that we'd be looking to get over and to get through in the cup. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot more we can say about that.
They're going to banana skin us. I can feel it now. We've talked our chances up. We're going to fall over in a heap and get knocked out by Stevenage.
Look, I mean, the thing that always reassures me with cup games this season is that it feels like, I think it was in the EFL Trophy, we made the 10 changes or 11 changes and still put out a really strong side. So I'm not as nervous in this one as I might have been in previous seasons. I think in previous seasons, sometimes Bruce or Adkins or someone might have made a lot of changes and played a lot of kids. There's a game in particular I'll touch on when we talk about Doncaster, but they might have done that to sort of manage the squad and give everyone game time, and then we've slipped up. But this season, I feel like even if we rotate and play our second 11, it's still going to be pretty strong.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about it, and you swap out, say, Wilkes and Magennis, and if it's a Delacoon or King Lewis Potter, well, there's one. Eves comes in for Magennis, James Scott comes in, still very strong. We've already seen Regan Slater, Alfie Jones can do the job in centre mid. Doherty's got to come back from injury. Yeah, Batty, we haven't even seen him for a few weeks, which is a shame. But there's another one. Yeah, you're absolutely.
Coyle, McLaughlin, Device, Fleming as your back four, Long in goal. Like that's still a very strong side.
It's it's crazy to think, like, when you look at how the squads have been over the last couple of years, where it's been a very clear 11 and and a very clear bunch of, I guess, subs and reserves, that it's crazy to look at our squad at the moment and go how open it really is, and that anyone that's not starting at the moment could feasibly step into a starting position at any point and perform and not change the team's dynamic too much.
Definitely. Well, we'll look ahead then to the really big spicy clash in the league against Doncaster. Of course, Grant McCann's former club pinched McCann from them, and they then appointed Darren Moore, who was the former West Brom manager, to the job. He's done a pretty reasonable job with them so far. They had a promising season last year and are looking good again this season. They've had a few pretty good results as well. So even though they're not right up at the top end of the table, they have knocked off a couple of the bigger clubs along the way. So certainly not a game to take lightly, and especially with all of the heat behind the game as well. It's certainly going to be a really interesting clash. The last two times we've played them were in the League Cup, and one of those was sort of the infamous or famous game under Slutsky, where I think was it Slutsky or was it the season before, where I think it was Slutsky, where we had basically no second team. We had no first team even. So there's the second team that we put out for the League Cup game was virtually, our under 23s, under 21s almost. And I think I remember from the lineup or from the tweets after the game, they sort of went through all the players who made their full senior debuts for City, and it was pretty much half the side or most of the side playing their first senior game for the club, which was, it was great for them and great experience for them. But, somewhat predictably, we didn't win the game, which was disappointing in itself. But in the league, we haven't played them since 2011-12, where we had 2 draws. So, not terrible form against them, but it's certainly been a while between drinks against Doncaster. So how do you see this one?
Look, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think, I'm sure that we're going to bag us out again if we win and say that we didn't deserve the win. But I think, as you mentioned, with being McCann's former club, it should be interesting. Hopefully it's played, in good spirits, and, that, I guess, the Doncaster players that worked with McCann will be friendly, and that he'll be friendly back. But
it'll be Wilkes' former club as well. I think he was with McCann. Yeah. So
look, I think it'll be, as I seem to say about every league game, it will be a tough game. But I think I think our attack is developing in such a way that our and we're in good form, that I'm not too concerned. I think even at the beginning of the season, when we were winning, but we were winning every game 1-0, it was sort of harder to tell about how we would go against a tougher opposition. But we're starting to get 2 or 3 goals every game, that I'm not too concerned. I think we'll get 3 points, and we'll continue our rich vein of form.
And you mentioned Doherty before, and of course Lewis Potter as well, both presumably to come back into the side for this game. Would you bring them in for this one, or would you maybe look to play them in the cup game instead?
Well, I don't know. That's a good one. Doherty's coming back from, is it an injury or an illness, or I think it was a niggle or something. But I don't know. Probably the cup, because I think it'd be pretty harsh on anyone who's played these last few games to drop them straight out. And as much as I enjoyed Doherty and have enjoyed him this season, he's been fairly wasteful in a few key moments. And that has been frustrating, because he realistically should probably have 3 or 4 goals himself.
Yeah.
But has 0.
And he seems to have a very he seems to have a very typical sort of shot where he'll sort of on the edge of the D or right on the edge of the box, he'll sort of run in and hit it, and it'll curl towards on the post or something, and it'll just curl over, and it's just like Yeah, if he connected with it right, he's got a few screamers in his bag. He just can't quite connect properly.
Yeah, so look, I think probably if they're available for the cup, I'd play them in the cup, and then let them sit on the bench midweek and have a crack there. But yeah, look, I think you have to reward the players that are doing the job. You can't. I don't think you can. Even though Lewis Potter was doing the job, and if the players that had come in weren't doing the job, then I would throw him straight back in. Absolutely. But I think since he stepped out and since Doherty has stepped out, that the players that have come in have been doing the job. They haven't. It's not like there's been a Lewis Potter sized hole in the squad or a Doherty sized hole. So I think it would be pretty harsh on the other players to get dropped just for them to be reinstated straight from injury. But
no, definitely, I agree. So I think you're right. I'd probably put them in the cup game, which again shows that we'll have a reasonably strong side in that cup game, and see how the starters perform against Doncaster. Probably bring these guys on as subs in that game, and go from there. But look, it'll be another interesting game. It'll be great to see if we can keep this run going. Sort of mentioned before, we're coming up on a third of the season gone, so it'd be great if we can sort of be going into that stretch with another couple of wins under our belt, just to keep that momentum going. And before long, it's gonna be Christmas. There'll be a big bunch of games around Christmas, and then we're pretty much halfway through the season. So it's gonna be pretty exciting times over the next month. So it's gonna be pretty exciting to follow along with the results as we do. But until the next time, thanks for joining me, Dan.
not a problem. It's a pleasure to come on and talk about City.
No worries. And thank you everyone for listening in. As mentioned before, we've also got our flashback episode being released at the start of next week. So keep an eye out for that one. But otherwise, until next time, come on, City.